Once upon a time, there was a small village nestled deep in the heart of a dense forest. The villagers led simple lives and took pride in their close-knit community. However, like all small towns, they had their own secrets and stories to tell. One of the most famous tales that had been passed down from generation to generation was about the abandoned mansion on the outskirts of the village. The villagers often whispered about the ghostly woman who haunted the old mansion, and the rumors surrounding her had only grown stronger over the years. Despite the warnings and superstitions, a young couple decided to explore the mansion, curious about the ghostly rumors. They found the old mansion exactly as the villagers had described it, dark, eerie, and abandoned. As they walked through the dusty halls, they could feel the weight of the mansion's history pressing down on them. Suddenly, they heard a sound coming from upstairs. It was a low, ghostly moan that seemed to be getting closer. Trembling with fear, the couple slowly made their way up the stairs. As they reached the top, they saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was a ghostly woman dressed in a flowing white gown, with long black hair that covered her face. She was staring straight at them, her eyes glowing with an unearthly light. The couple was frozen with fear, but the ghost began to move towards them, her moans growing louder and more eerie. They turned to run, but their feet wouldn't budge. The ghost was getting closer and closer, and they could feel her cold breath on their necks. Just as they thought they were done for, the ghost suddenly vanished into thin air. The couple ran out of the mansion as fast as they could, never to return. Despite the couple's harrowing experience, some villagers continued to venture into the mansion, hoping to uncover the mystery of the ghostly woman. But as the years passed, the rumors and whispers grew even more exaggerated, and the mansion was eventually boarded up and left abandoned. However, as the years went by, a group of curious teenagers decided to explore the abandoned mansion, and they discovered something that had been hidden for years. In one of the mansion's hidden rooms, they found an old journal that belonged to the mansion's previous owner. The journal revealed that the ghostly woman was actually a real person who had lived in the mansion long ago. She was a recluse who suffered from a rare disease that caused her skin to turn pale and her hair to fall out. The villagers had shunned her, and she had died alone in the mansion, leaving behind only her ghostly presence. The teenagers realized that the rumors and superstitions surrounding the ghostly woman had been created to protect her memory and to prevent anyone from disturbing her final resting place. The truth was far less frightening than the ghost story that had been passed down from generation to generation. The abandoned mansion remained a reminder of the village's past and its secrets, but the teenagers had uncovered the truth, and they had a newfound appreciation for the power of storytelling and the importance of preserving history, even if it was shrouded in mystery and superstition. Years passed since the teenagers had discovered the truth about the ghostly woman in that mansion. The village had grown and changed, but the mansion remained a symbol of its past. One day, a group of urban explorers arrived in the village, looking for abandoned places to explore and document. They had heard about the haunted mansion and were eager to investigate it. The group consisted of 4 young adults, each with their own specialized equipment for exploring and documenting abandoned places. As they made their way through the dense forest, they marveled at the beauty of the scenery and the peacefulness of the village. As they approached the mansion, they could feel a sense of eeriness in the air. The mansion had a foreboding presence, and the overgrown garden and boarded-up windows only added to its mysterious aura. The urban explorers made their way inside the mansion and were immediately struck by its beauty. The mansion's walls were adorned with intricate carvings and paintings, and the once grand staircase was still intact, leading up to the mansion's upper floors. As they explored, they noticed that the mansion had undergone some recent changes. The furniture had been rearranged, and some of the rooms had been cleaned and dusted. It seemed as if someone had been living there, even though the mansion was supposed to be abandoned. Suddenly, they heard footsteps coming from the upper floor. They exchanged looks of concern, unsure of what to expect. As the footsteps grew closer, they could hear someone humming an old melody. As the figure appeared, they saw a woman, dressed in a simple cotton dress, carrying a basket of fresh fruit. She was humming an old folk song, and as she saw the group, she greeted them with a smile. The group was taken aback by the woman's presence. She introduced herself as Maria and explained that she had been living in the mansion for the past few months. Maria was a kind and welcoming woman, and the group soon found themselves sharing stories with her. She explained that she had been living in the mansion for a while, trying to find peace and quiet after a difficult divorce. As they chatted, the group realized that Maria was not the ghostly woman they had expected to encounter here. She was a real person with her own hopes and dreams, who had found refuge in the mansion's solitude. As they left the place, they knew that they had uncovered a secret that few knew about. The mansion was not just a haunted place, but a home to those who needed it the most. And as they made their way back to the city, they couldn't help but wonder about the other hidden secrets that lay buried in the past. As the moon hung high in the sky and the wind whistled through the trees, the old mansion on the outskirts of town stood alone and ominous. It was said that the house was haunted by the ghost of a young woman who had died under mysterious circumstances many years ago. The locals whispered that she had been murdered by her jealous lover, who had then fled the country, leaving her to wander the halls of the mansion for all eternity. Some said that she was seeking revenge on those who had wronged her, while others claimed that she was simply lost and confused. One dark and stormy night, a group of teenagers decided to explore the abandoned mansion. They had heard the rumors about the ghost, but dismissed them as silly stories told to scare children. As they crept through the dusty halls, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls, they began to feel uneasy. Suddenly, one of them heard a faint whisper in the distance. They froze in fear, their hearts pounding in their chests. They turned off their flashlights and huddled together, trying to make sense of what they had just heard. As they strained their ears, they heard the sound of footsteps echoing through the empty halls. They started to back away, but then they saw her, the ghostly figure of a young woman, dressed in a flowing white gown, appeared before them. She floated towards them, her hair and gown trailing behind her, and let out a blood-curdling scream. The teenagers scrambled to their feet and ran for the nearest exit, but the doors were all locked. They were trapped in the mansion with the ghost, who seemed to be getting closer and closer. They could feel her icy breath on their necks, and her whispers filled the air. They realized that they were not alone, and that they might never make it out alive. As they frantically searched for a way out, they stumbled upon a hidden room. It was filled with dusty old books and artifacts, and in the center of the room stood an ancient-looking chest. They hurriedly pried it open, hoping to find something that could help them escape. Inside the chest, they found an old diary written by the woman who had died in the mansion. As they read her words, they realized that she had been wrongfully accused of a crime she had not committed, and that her lover had been the real murderer. They also discovered that the mansion was filled with hidden passageways and secret rooms, which had been used by the original owners to smuggle contraband in and out of the country. With this newfound knowledge, the teenagers were able to find a way out of the mansion, and they ran into the night, never looking back. But even as they left the mansion behind, they could still hear the ghostly whispers of the woman, still trapped in the house. They knew that they had uncovered a dark and sinister secret, and that the ghost would continue to haunt the mansion until justice was served. The teenagers ran through the dark forest, their hearts pounding and their legs aching. They could still hear the ghostly whispers of the young woman, her voice echoing through the trees. They eventually stumbled upon a small village, where they sought refuge in a cozy inn. They sat by the fire, sipping hot cocoa and discussing what they had seen and heard in the mansion. As they talked, they realized that they had stumbled upon a long-forgotten mystery, one that had been buried for centuries. They knew that they had to find out more to uncover the truth behind the young woman's death. They spent the next few days exploring the village, talking to the locals, and poring over old documents and records. They discovered that the mansion had once been owned by a wealthy merchant who had made his fortune through shady dealings and illegal activities. They also learned that the young woman who had died in the mansion had been the merchant's daughter, and that she had been falsely accused of stealing from her own father. She had been locked away in the mansion, and her lover had tried to free her, only to be caught and blamed for the theft. The teenagers realized that the real thief had been the merchant himself, who had hidden his loot in the secret passageways of the mansion. They knew that they had to find the treasure and prove the young woman's innocence. They returned to the mansion, armed with the knowledge they had gained, and began to search for the hidden passageways. They soon discovered a hidden room filled with treasure and valuable artifacts. As they searched through the piles of gold and jewels, they found a dusty old locket which had belonged to the young woman. Inside the locket was a picture of her and her lover, and a note that read, "Together forever, even in death." Suddenly, the room started to shake, and the ghostly figure of the young woman appeared before them. She seemed angry and agitated, and the teenagers realized that they had disturbed her resting place. They tried to calm her down, explaining that they had uncovered the truth behind her death, and that they were trying to clear her name. The ghostly figure listened to their words, and slowly she began to fade away. The teenagers emerged from the mansion, tired and exhausted, but filled with a sense of accomplishment. They had uncovered a long-forgotten mystery and had brought justice to the young woman who had been wrongfully accused. As they walked away from the mansion, they could still feel the presence of the ghostly figure, but they knew that she was at peace and that she would no longer haunt the halls of the old mansion. The village, too, had been transformed, as the truth behind the mystery had been revealed. The locals began to embrace the teenagers, thanking them for uncovering the truth and bringing closure to a long-forgotten chapter in the village's history. The teenagers left the village, their hearts filled with a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. They knew that they had accomplished something special and that they had made a difference in the world. As they looked back at the old mansion, they could still see the ghostly figure of the young woman, but this time she was smiling, as if to thank them for setting her free. Once upon a time, there was a young girl named Emily who had just moved into a new house with her family. The house was old and creaky, but it had a certain charm that her parents had fallen in love with. Emily, on the other hand, was not so sure. From the moment they moved in, Emily felt like something was off. She would hear strange noises in the middle of the night, like whispers and footsteps that seemed to come from nowhere. Her parents brushed it off as just the house settling, but Emily knew better. She could feel a presence in the house, something dark and sinister that was watching her every move. As the days went on, Emily's unease grew. She started to see things out of the corner of her eye, shadows that moved on their own, objects that would suddenly appear and disappear. One night, she woke up to find a figure standing at the foot of her bed. It was a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothing with long flowing hair that covered her face. Emily screamed, but when her parents came rushing in, there was no one there. Emily knew that she had to do something about the ghostly presence in her new home. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, and the strange noises that played every night were becoming unbearable. So she started to research the history of the house. What she found chilled her to the bone. The previous owner had died in the house, and there were rumors that she had been practicing dark magic before her death. Emily became convinced that the woman's spirit was still in the house, and that she was the one causing all that occurrences. Determined to rid her home of the ghostly presence, Emily began to seek out ways to protect herself. She sculled books on warding off spirits and consulted with experts in the paranormal. She even went so far as to perform her own rituals, burning sage and sprinkling salt around the house. She was determined to do whatever it took to make the house safe again. But at first, it seemed like Emily's efforts were in vain. The ghostly activity continued, and Emily felt like she was losing her mind. She would wake up in the middle of the night to whispers and footsteps, and the shadows that once haunted her seemed to grow bolder. Emily began to doubt herself, wondering if she was truly capable of banishing the ghost from her home. However, slowly but surely, things began to change. The noises in the night became less frequent, and the shadows that had once haunted her seemed to retreat. Emily's parents noticed the change too, and began to believe that their daughter's efforts had paid off. Emily continued her rituals and research, determined to keep the ghostly presence at bay. Finally, one night, Emily felt a sense of peace in the house that she hadn't felt before. The air was still, and there were no strange noises or eerie feelings. She slept soundly, without any disturbances. When she woke up the next morning, she knew that the ghostly presence had finally left her home. Emily breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that all her hard work and determination had paid off. She felt a sense of pride in herself, knowing that she had faced her fears and conquered them. Years went by, and Emily grew up and moved out of the house. But she never forgot the experience of dealing with the ghostly presence. She knew that she had faced her fears and conquered them, and that she had learned the power of determination and belief in oneself. And she knew that she will always be ready to face any challenge that came her way, no matter how terrifying it may seem.
Emily's heart raced with excitement as the moving truck pulled into the driveway of their new home. At 8 years old, she was a bundle of energy, her bright green eyes always searching for something new to explore. Her father, John, had received a job offer in the small town of Willow Creek, and they had decided it was time for a fresh start after a difficult year. The house, a 2-story Victorian with a wraparound porch, had seen better days. The paint was chipped, and the shutters hung crooked, but Emily's mother, Sarah, saw the potential for a beautiful family home beneath the wear and tear. As their belongings were unloaded from the truck, Emily could hardly contain her excitement to explore the house. John noticed her eagerness and smiled. "All right, Emily," he said. "Why don't you take a look around while your mom and I start unpacking?" Emily's eyes sparkled with anticipation, and she dashed into the house, leaving her parents to their work. The creaking floorboards and musty smell of the old house only fueled Emily's curiosity. She wandered from room to room, each space offering its own unique character. When she reached the second floor, she discovered a locked door at the end of the hallway. Intrigued, she tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Frustrated, she ran downstairs and found her mother in the kitchen, unpacking boxes. "Mom, there's a locked room upstairs. Do you know where I can find the key?" she asked. Sarah looked thoughtful for a moment before pointing to a small brass key hanging on a hook by the back door. "I think that might be the one. Be careful, Emily," she warned. With the key in hand, Emily returned to the locked door, her heart pounding in her chest. She inserted the key, and with a satisfying click, the door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with dusty, antique furniture draped in ghostly white sheets. As Emily stepped inside, she felt a sudden chill, despite the warm summer air outside. She could have sworn she heard faint whispers echoing through the room, but when she strained her ears to listen, the sound vanished. Unnerved but determined, Emily began to explore the room, pulling the sheets off the furniture and examining the long-forgotten items that filled the space. Little did she know that this room would change her life forever. Over the next few days, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the house. She would hear strange noises in the night, footsteps in the hallway, and hushed whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves. In addition to the noises, objects around the house seemed to move on their own, with her toys appearing in places she hadn't left them. Emily tried to tell her parents about the bizarre occurrences, but they dismissed her fears as the product of an overactive imagination. "You're just not used to the sounds of an old house, sweetheart," her father reassured her. "It's all just settling noises, nothing to worry about." Feeling alone in her concerns, Emily decided to take matters into her own hands. If her parents wouldn't believe her, she would find the truth herself. The next day, she ventured to the town's library to research the history of her new home. Emily spent hours poring over old newspapers and town records, searching for any clues about her house. As she flipped through the pages, she stumbled upon a series of articles from decades past that detailed a tragic accident involving the previous occupants of her home. The articles told the story of a young girl named Abigail, who had lived in the house with her family. One fateful day, Abigail had been playing in the attic when she fell through a weak spot in the floor, suffering fatal injuries. As Emily continued to read, she felt a growing sense of unease. The more she learned about Abigail, the more she became convinced that the girl's spirit was still present in the house, unable to move on. Determined to learn more, Emily befriended an elderly neighbor named Mrs. Thompson, who had lived in the area for many years. As the two sat in Mrs. Thompson's cozy living room, Emily listened intently to the stories the old woman shared about the house and its former inhabitants. Mrs. Thompson told Emily about the sadness that had befallen Abigail's family following her death, and how they eventually moved away, leaving the house empty for many years. Some say that Abigail's spirit never left. Mrs. Thompson said in a hushed voice, her eyes filled with sorrow, "She's trapped here, searching for a way to find peace." Emily's heart ached for Abigail, and she couldn't bear the thought of the young girl's spirit being trapped in her house. She knew she had to do something to help her, but she wasn't sure how. Mrs. Thompson, sensing Emily's determination, offered to help the young girl understand the spirit world. Under Mrs. Thompson's guidance, Emily learned about the power of forgiveness and the importance of empathy in communicating with spirits. As the days passed, Emily began to feel a connection with Abigail, sensing her presence in the house and occasionally catching glimpses of the ghostly figure out of the corner of her eye. One afternoon, while Emily and Mrs. Thompson were having tea, the old woman mentioned a diary that had once belonged to Abigail. It said to contain the key to helping Abigail find peace, Mrs. Thompson explained. But no one knows where it's hidden. Feeling a renewed sense of purpose, Emily enlisted the help of her new friend Jake, a boy from her school who shared her interest in the supernatural. Together, they embarked on a mission to find Abigail's diary and uncover the secrets it held. After days of searching the house, Emily and Jake finally discovered the diary hidden behind a loose floorboard in the attic. They carefully opened the old book, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. As they read the entries, they learned of the dark family secrets that had led to Abigail's untimely death. Armed with this knowledge, Emily knew what she had to do. She and Jake returned to the locked room where she first felt Abigail's presence, and with a deep breath, Emily called out to the spirits that haunted her home. The room grew cold, and the air seemed to vibrate with energy. Emily felt a mixture of fear and determination, but she knew she couldn't let Abigail down. Speaking softly, she shared what she had learned from the diary and offered her forgiveness and understanding to the spirits. As Emily spoke, the atmosphere in the room shifted. A warm golden light filled the space, and the air seemed to hum with a sense of peace and closure. With tears in her eyes, Emily watched as Abigail's spirit appeared before her, a faint smile on her face. "Thank you," Abigail whispered, her voice barely audible, and with that, she vanished, finally able to move on and find the peace she had been seeking for so long. In the days that followed, Emily noticed a profound change in her home. The strange noises and eerie occurrences ceased, and the once foreboding house now felt warm and welcoming. The experience had brought Emily and her family closer together, and they grew to love their new home despite its dark past. Emily's friendship with Jake and Mrs. Thompson continued to flourish, and she often found herself thinking about Abigail and the lessons she had learned from the young spirit. Through her connection with the other side, Emily had discovered the importance of compassion, empathy, and understanding, and she carried those lessons with her for the rest of her life. The house, once a place of darkness and despair, was now a home filled with love and light. The echoes of the past had finally been put to rest, leaving behind a bright future for Emily and her family. In the sleepy town of River's End, nestled between thick forests and a winding river, there was an old house known as the Nethercott Mansion. The once beautiful Victorian structure had been neglected for years, its facade slowly being overtaken by creeping ivy and rotting wood. The townspeople often whispered about strange happenings at the house, but few dared to venture inside. Layla was a curious and brave 12-year-old who had recently moved to River's End with her mother, Anna. They had no choice but to move into the decrepit mansion after Anna's divorce left them with little money and nowhere else to go. Leela had heard the rumors about the house, but she was determined to find out the truth. Anna was a strict and protective mother, always insisting that Layla stay away from certain parts of the house, especially the locked basement door. "You must never, ever go down there," she would warn her daughter. But Leela couldn't help but be drawn to the mysterious room, as she often heard strange noises emanating from beneath the floorboards. It sounded like soft whimpers and scratching, almost like a wounded animal. One day, when Anna was out running errands, Leela decided to investigate the basement. She picked a lock with a hairpin and slowly creaked the door open. The stale air from the basement wafted up, smelling of damp earth and something else she couldn't quite place. As she descended the rickety wooden steps, she noticed the basement was dimly lit by a single flickering light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Tiptoeing cautiously, she tried to locate the source of the strange noises. She could hear the whimpering more clearly now, and it was accompanied by a sound like chains rattling. Finally, Leela discovered a shadowy figure huddled in the far corner of the room. At first glance, it looked like a boy around her age, but as she approached, she realized something was horribly wrong. The boy's hands and feet were missing, replaced with crudely bandaged stumps. Eyes were wide with terror, and he was chained to the wall. Suddenly, Leela heard the front door slam shut, and her heart raced. Her mother was home. Panicking, she raced back up the stairs, slamming the basement door just as her mother entered the hallway. Anna's face was a mixture of fury and terror as she scolded Leela for disobeying her. "Never go down there again," Anna screamed, tears streaming down her face. She hugged Leela tightly and then handed her a cookie, trying to calm her down. As Leela ate the cookie, she couldn't shake the image of the boy in the basement from her mind. She couldn't understand why her mother would keep such a terrible secret, and she knew she had to do something to help the boy. Over the next few days, Leela tried to gather information about the Nethercott mansion and the boy in the basement. She found old newspaper clippings in the town library, detailing a series of gruesome events that had taken place in the house the Nethercott family who had built. The mansion over a century ago were said to have dabbled in dark and forbidden rituals, leading to the disappearance of several townspeople. The family was eventually run out of town, but the sinister legacy of their deeds remained in the mansion. Layla decided that she needed to free the boy and find out the truth about her family's connection to the house. One night, she waited until her mother was asleep and then sneaked down to the basement again. The boy was still huddled in the corner, his eyes widening in surprise as Leela approached. She had brought a pair of wire cutters and some first aid supplies to help him. As she knelt beside him, she whispered softly, trying to reassure him that she was there to help. "My name is Leela. I'm going to get you out of here," she promised. The boy's eyes filled with tears, and he struggled to speak through the pain. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice weak and hoarse. "My name is Noah." Carefully, Leela used the wire cutters to snip the chains that held Noah captive. As she worked, she asked him about his past and how he had ended up in the basement. Noah explained that he was one of the last descendants of the Nethercott family, and he had been taken captive by a group of people seeking revenge for the atrocities committed by his ancestors. They had subjected him to horrific torture, including the amputation of his hands and feet. When Leela asked him about her mother's involvement, Noah hesitated. "I've seen her come down here," he admitted, "but she only ever brought me food and water." She seemed afraid, like she was being forced to do it. After freeing Noah from his chains, Leela bandaged his wounds and helped him up the stairs. Together, they made their way to Leela's room, where she hid him in the closet. Leela knew that if her mother found out what she had done, there would be hell to pay. But she was determined to protect Noah and find out the truth. Over the next few weeks, Leela and Noah became close friends. With Leela's help, Noah slowly began to recover both physically and emotionally from his ordeal. During the day, while Anna was at work, they would research the dark history of the Nethercott family and try to uncover the identity of Noah's captors. One evening while Anna was out, Leela and Noah made a shocking discovery. They found a hidden room behind a bookcase in the study, which contained a trove of sinister artifacts and journals. The journals belonged to Anna's great-grandmother, who had been a member of the vengeful group that had captured Noah. They detailed the group's twisted beliefs and their plan to use Noah as a sacrifice to cleanse the town of the Nethercott family's dark influence. Horrified by what they had discovered, Leela and Noah knew they had to expose the truth and bring the remaining members of the group to justice. But they also knew they needed to confront Anna and learn her role in the twisted plot. They decided to confront her the following evening when as they sat in the living room, waiting for Anna to arrive, the front door suddenly burst open. Anna stormed in, her face twisted in rage, and in her hand, she held one of the journals they had found in the hidden room. "How dare you?" she screamed, shaking the journal at Leela. "You've endangered us all." Tears filled Leela's eyes as she tried to understand her mother's involvement in the terrible events. "Mom, please," she pleaded. "We just wanted to know the truth. We can help Noah and stop this from happening to anyone else." Anna stared at her daughter for a moment, her anger slowly dissipating. "You don't understand," she whispered. "This isn't just about Noah. It's about our entire family. We've been bound to this curse for generations, and if we don't follow through, we'll all be damned." As the weight of her mother's words sunk in, Leela realized the gravity of the situation. She looked at Noah, who was trembling with fear, and then back at her mother. "We can't just let this go on," Leela insisted. "We have to find a way to break this curse and save Noah." Anna collapsed into a chair, her face pale and tired. "I've spent years trying to find a way out," she admitted. "I never wanted any of this for us, Leela, but every time I thought I found a solution, it led to more darkness and suffering." Leela took a deep breath, determined to find a way to help her family and Noah. "We can't give up," she said. "We have to believe that there's a way to break this curse and free us from this nightmare." With Anna's reluctant agreement, the three of them set to work researching the origins of the curse and the rituals that the vengeful group had performed. They spent countless hours poring over old books and documents, trying to piece together a solution that would save them all. Finally, after weeks of effort, they discovered a ritual that promised to break the curse and free them from their dark legacy. The ritual required them to gather several rare and powerful ingredients, as well as to perform a series of complex incantations. With each step, the danger and difficulty increased, but Leela, Noah, and Anna were united in their determination to see it through. The night of the ritual, they gathered in the hidden room behind the bookcase. The room was dimly lit by flickering candles, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Leela felt a chill run down her spine as they began the incantations, each word resonating with ancient power. As the ritual progressed, the air in the room seemed to grow heavier, and a strange, otherworldly energy filled the space. Leela could feel the dark presence of the curse bearing down on them, trying to resist their efforts. But she held onto her courage, knowing that their only hope of escaping the nightmare lay in completing the ritual. Finally, with a deafening crack, the oppressive atmosphere lifted, and a wave of relief washed over them. The room was suddenly bathed in a soft, warm light, and Leela knew in her heart that they had succeeded. In the days and weeks that followed, Leela and her family noticed a dramatic change in their lives. The once dreaded Nethercott mansion seemed to shed its dark past, becoming a welcoming and beautiful home. The townspeople of River's End began to accept them, no longer whispering about the haunted house and its terrible secrets. Noah, now freed from the horrors that had plagued his family for generations, began to rebuild his life. With the help of Leela and Anna, he received prosthetic hands and feet, allowing him to regain his independence and start anew. As for Leela and her mother, they were finally able to let go of the fear and guilt that had haunted them for so long. They found solace in the knowledge that they had broken the curse and saved their family from a dark and twisted fate. The tale of the Nethercott mansion and its grisly past eventually faded into legend, replaced by a story of hope, courage, and the power of love to conquer. even the darkest of curses, and as Leela, Anna, and Noah moved forward, they knew that they would forever be bound together, not by the horrors of their past, but by the unbreakable bonds of family and friendship.